Hey yo, what's up? It's Joe back with a new video. So today we're going to be discussing TypeScript versus C# and the similarities. So let's just go ahead and get started. So what you're going to see here is my TypeScript code. I'm going to run it after I type it out, and you're going to see the result pop up down here below where you see the mouse moving. And if you look over here, you're going to see the C# code, and I'm going to run it, and then as I run it, you're going to see the result pop up down here. I won't be able to touch on every single example because this video will just carry over for hours. I'm just going to touch on different examples from different complexity, just so you can see the different things you can do and how they're very similar. And now with that being said, now we're actually going to go ahead and start writing some code. So let's just first talk about variable declarations. That's like one of the first things you learn when you learn the programming language, right? So let's just say I have a first name variable, and I want to say it's going to be a string, and I want to say the first name is Joe. And I'm going to have a last name. Let's just actually do a const and then my last name. So first, let me explain something real quick. So in C# you have two different types. Well, not two different types, but you can declare them as a let. You can declare them using let, and you can declare using const. Let means that it can be overwritten later on down the line. Const means that it can't be overwritten. So if I wanted to console this, I can say console.log, because this is how you log to the screen. I can do string interpolation here. So string interpolation, this allows me to write out a string and include variables in it without having to say first name plus first name, or first name plus last name plus something else. I can kind of do it something similar to this. Not similar, but actually just like this. So what I'm saying here is console.log, this is going to be a full string. The tilde is what it's going to turn into string interpolation. And the $, and then the brackets for the first name, $, and brackets for the last name. So now if I run this, I'm going to see my first name and last name printed out to the screen. So let's do some of the same thing. Let's do something very similar, but let's do it in C#. So it's going to be a little bit different in C#. Here in C# you actually put the types first. So it's going to be string first name. You don't need the type on the outside of here. The one difference is you can't use single quotes for strings inside of C# code. You have to use double quotes. Let's just change that to a double quote. Do the same thing here. The only way you can use a single quote is if you're using a char, and it will have to be something like this. And then of course you can do a single quote, and it has to be one character, and that's fine. Well, we're not going to do that for now because we're going to make them look the same. So string first name, and then here we're going to still do the const. We're going to say const string last name, take it out there. You already have our double quote there. And then to console.write line, or to console or write to the screen for C# is going to be write line. And then here the string interpolation is a little bit different. Instead of tildes, it's going to be a double quote, and then the $sign is on the outside of the double quote, and then you're going to remove the $signs outside of the brackets. And then now if I run this, I'm going to see the same result printed out from the C# code. It's going to say Joe Benjamin right there. So now let's do something else. Let's try to overwrite this name. So first name equals Joe2. And that's fine, right? I can overwrite that. But if I try to do the last name, I'm going to get an issue here because I can't overwrite a constant. And just to show you that it's pretty much the same thing over here, if I came here and I say first name equals Joe2, that is fine. And if I say last name, I'm going to get an issue here because it's a constant, so I can't overwrite it. But if I take off the word constant, then that is fine. If I take off the word constant here and put let, then that is fine. All right, so there's some variable declarations. So now let's go ahead and look into some arrow functions. If you've been using TypeScript or C#, you more than likely ran across arrow functions. They're pretty popular. So let's do a simple arrow function that's just going to get some numbers. So it's a const. We're going to call it get numbers equals arrow function. We're going to pass it two arguments. A is going to be a number, B is going to be a number, and then it's going to return, which basically is, well, not really return, but it's going to do an arrow function and just write to the screen. So with TypeScript, there is a little trick that you can do that if you just say A and B, or whatever the variable names you have, or you can just even keep it going to something else like this and something else like this. and it's actually going to just put everything and then separate it by spaces. So in this case, so I want to call it, if I just say get numbers, let's say 3 and 4, and let's run it, you're going to see 3, 4 print to the screen right here. And if I want to do the same thing for here, I can say, let's actually just copy here, just so I can show you how easy it is. So here we're not going to say const. So one difference is when you're using C#, there's two different ones. There's an action and there's a func. An action is used when you don't have to return a value for an arrow function. And a func is used when you want to return a value. So in this case, we're not returning a value, so we're just going to say action. And then here we're going to actually put our types. It's not called numbers because in C# they're called ints. So here we don't need to type there anymore. We don't need to type there. And then this needs to be console.writeLine. And then here, that little trick won't work in TypeScript. We actually need to go ahead and do the string interpolation. So we're just going to say $, and then the double quotes. And then inside here, we're going to say A and then B. It'll be A and then B. And then now if we call get numbers, if you run it, we're going to get the same result for 3 and 4, which is right there. So let's say we want to do something different and say we actually wanted to print the numbers. So let's just call this print numbers now. So I'm not get numbers, but let's say add numbers or get added numbers. Okay, so here we're going to actually have it added up. So let's say A plus B. And then here we're going to say get added numbers. And then here let's say console, maybe say console.log. And then we're just pretty much logging out the result of that function. So now if I run it, it should be A plus B, which is 7. So to do that same thing over here, remember I just said when you're trying to return a value, you can't use an action, you have to use a func. So I can say a func there. And then along here, I need to actually tell it what kind of value I'm returning. So I'm returning an int. And then here, you still have your A and B, and then you just say A plus B. And then here, we can just say console.writeLine. And here, I didn't change the name of the function here, but as you can see, it's still going to give you a result, which is 7 right here. So now we've done the arrow functions, let's take a look at destructuring, which is also pretty cool. So in TypeScript, if I had an object that maybe said something like, let's say const, let's just say person equals, let's just say first name equals Joe, and last name equals Benjamin, and let's just say month equals 8. All right, and let's just get rid of this stuff because it's going to cause me problems, because I don't want to end up having to try to redeclare something. So I have my person that I've developed, well created, which is right here, person. So if I wanted to if I wanted to use this person, like destructure it, I can say const, I can pull out the variables that I want and say first name, last name, and month, and we're going to say equals person. So now if I look at this, these values are actually coming from here. So if I want to log that out, I say console.log, and let's just say first name, last name, and month. Now if I run that, I'm going to see the first name, last name, and the number 8, which is here. Now if I want to do that same kind of logic over here, I can use something called a tuple or a tuple. I normally say tuple, but some people say tuple, so I'm not really sure which is the actual correct way. So I can do something like a var. Var is pretty much declaring a type, but it's declaring it implicitly. It's going to look at whatever you give it to know which type to use. So I can just say var, and let's just say person, and I'm going to say equals, I'm going to actually give it the values. I'm going to say Joe, Benjamin, and then the number 8. Okay, so now if I want to get this value, I can do the destructuring, and I can say var, and then I can say first name, last name, and then month equals person. And then now if I want to actually use this, I can say console.writeLine, and let's do some more string interpolation. And do the last name, and then do the month. And it's complaining because I've already used these values here, so let's just get rid of this stuff and get that out of the way. Now if I run it, I'm going to see pretty much the same result as here. First name, last name, and then number 8. And if you want to actually see what these values are, we have a system.string, system.string, system.int32. And if I look here, I have a system.string first name, last name, and then int32 for a month. All right. So now that we've got that, let's also talk about like for loops, because people use for loops a lot, right? And I'm not going to go through like some of the built-in looping mechanisms. I'm just going to do like a regular old for loop. So let's just say you created an array, and I say the array is called names. So I'm going to say const names, and the type is going to be a string, which is going to be an array of strings. And let's say equals Joe, Jay, and Ben. And now if I want to loop through these names, I can say for, I'm going to say let I equals 0, I is less than names, .int, and then I plus plus, and then we're just going to say, oops, oh, come on here. Console.log and then names sub I. And if I run that, I'm going to just go through the names and write them out. Which, 1 second, I need to save it first. And then now we have Joe, Jay, and Ben. All right, so let's do some of the same logic over here. So let's do an array for C#. It's going to be a little bit different again. So we're going to say string of names, and here we're going to change this to the other bracket so it set the arrays, and then we also need to change these single quotes to double quotes, and we do the same thing here. And then here it won't be let, it will be for int I equals 0, I is less than names. The L is actually not lowercase, it's going to be uppercase, I plus plus, and then this console has to be the right console.writeLine, or console.write if you want to do it that way. If I run it, I'm going to see the same results again. Joe, Jay, and Ben. Alright, so now we've discussed the for loops. Let's talk about like some class stuff. So let's just get rid of this stuff here. So let's say if I have a class, let's just call it person. Let's actually say animal. And let's say in the animal, I have so this is TypeScript, so I have a constructor. And let's just have it console.writeLine and just say I am from the animal class. And then if we wanted to actually declare an animal, we just say const a equals new animal, and if we run it, it's going to end up calling the constructor I am from the animal class. Now if we do something very similar in TypeScript, let's just put this up here, and let's just get rid of this stuff. So we have our class animal. You don't have a constructor, or you have a constructor, but it's not called constructor inside of C#. It's going to be public. You're just going to call it the same name of the class. That's how it knows it's a constructor. And again, the console.log has to be console.writeLine or console.write, whichever one you prefer. And then this single quotes need to be changed to double quotes. And I actually need to go ahead and call it, because I haven't called it yet. So let's just say animal, which is the type, and let's call it A equals new animal. Now if I run it, I am from the animal class. Okay, so now let's actually try to extend the animal class. So in TypeScript, you can say class, let's just say dog, and let's say extends animal, which means that it's going to be extending from the animal class. And then I can do the same kind of constructor thing and just say console.log, I am from the dog class. So one other thing I have to add is whenever you're doing the constructor, I also need to call super, which is the base class. So now if I do that, if I do here, and let's say B equals new dog, and if I run it, you have the A happening first, which is I am from the animal class, and then the B calls the super class, which is I am from the animal class, and then and then it calls finishes off its own constructor, I am from the dog class. I guess we can just take this one out so it doesn't get confusing, and then you have them both of the constructors being called. So now if we want to do the same kind of logic for the dog class, so we have dog, there's no longer extends here, just going to do that symbol. So it knows it's extending from the animal, and then in here, we're actually going to say the public dog, and then here we're going to say base. That's like calling the super, now it's calling the base, and then here it's going to say console, and then we're going to do a WriteLine, and then change the single quote to double quote. And that's all right. Correct. Yes, I did. So now if I do here, let's just go and say animal, let's call it B equals new dog. So now we should get pretty much the same result. I am from the animal class, I am from the dog class, because we're declaring a new type of dog, and then dog is actually calling the base constructor first, which is I am from the animal class, and then it's going to call its own constructor. All right, so now we have the inheritance. Let's just take a quick look at something like generics here. So let's say we have a class called logger, okay? And then this logger is going to have a static type, which is going to call log, and then that static log is going to use some generics. So we'll just say input going to be a type of T, and then do the type there, and just say console.log input. So now we're pretty much doing some generics here. We have this static property of log here. So now if I come down here, I can say logger.log, and let's just make this lowercase, and we can just pass in the B. So now if we do that, it's not going to log probably exactly what you were thinking. It's going to say dog because it's logging the type. But what we can do is, if we were to come in here and then do something like public toString with a return type of string, and then we're just going to return this is from the toString of the dog class. And here we're going to actually turn this into a string. So we can do toString like that, or we can just do string interpolation again, and then move that out the way, and then run it. Now we're logging, should be logging here. This is from the toString of the dog class. So if you want to do something similar like that in like a logger using a logger with some generic types. Oops. So we have our class logger, and then we have a static. We're going to say void, and with a type of t. I'm going to do a capital here. It's going to be a log. Here we're going to say it's going to be a t input, and then here again it's going to be console.writeLine. And let's see, what is it complaining about? Yeah, there we go. So static, and then we have the log t, then console.writeLine, and here we're going to say that it's going to be void, and then static again. So if I come here and I say logger.log, and I say b, right here it doesn't know because it's private. But if I go here and put public, now it knows that it can access log. So now if I do this, and if I run it, it's going to say dog, because again, dog is a type. But to do that same kind of thing that we just did, we can actually come in here and override the toString. So we can say public override string toString, and just say return, this is from the toString of the dog class. Now if I run it, because we're going to call it toString method, this is from the toString of the dog class. So this is basically just some simple stuff we can do between TypeScript and C#, and I can go on and on and on and on. And if you would like me to continue making more videos like this, just let me know. But just keep in mind that you can do it, you can do both. You don't have to just do one. Or if you want to do one, that's fine too. But it is open to be able to do different things, because TypeScript and C# is so similar that if you learn one, you literally have the other one already in your head. It's just some minor changes in the syntax. And that's all I have for now. Hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to subscribe if you want to subscribe, and also like the video if you really did like the video. Until next time, peace out.